Would you believe this? The tree you walk past every day is almost dead. That massive trunk is really a wooden cathedral of silent skeletons. The living part is only a razor-thin ring tucked just beneath the bark. Each time wind brushes the leaves, billions of tiny tubes inside the trunk tense and pull invisible rivers upward. No pumps, no noise, just sunlight and leaves opening to breathe. Press your ear to the trunk and you'll hear nothing. But inside is a wild factory, cells willingly turning themselves into conduits, a thin belt coordinating food and signals, and a negative pressure so intense a human couldn't survive it. The tree builds its tower out of air, grinds rock with the chemistry of its roots, and negotiates with the sky through fragile vapor. Tonight, we'll make a careful cut through the bark, slip into that slender, living ring, and watch the machine at work, where death holds up life and life manages death. Once you understand this strange architecture, you'll never see a tree as background green again, but as nature's engineering masterpiece, quietly cooling the block, gathering clouds to call down rain, and keeping a little order on a restless planet. Ready? Take a deep breath, touch the rough bark. Let's begin. Long before trunks learned to stand, plants were thin films riding the skin of the sea. They floated, bathed in light, and drank water with their whole bodies. Then the shoreline tempted them. Land was harsh, dry wind, raw sun, gravity with an attitude. But it offered something the ocean could not, the chance to climb. On land, a new battlefield appeared along a single axis, up. If you could lift your face a little higher, you caught more light. If you rose above your neighbor, nature answered with a new material, lignin, a molecular brace that locks cellulose into something rigid, waterproof, and stubborn. Think of it as rebar woven into sugar glass. With lignin, stems stopped wrinkling. They started holding. Then came the masterstroke, wood, rings upon rings of reinforced tubes, light to carry, strong to stack, and most importantly, self-assembling. No furnace, no crane, sunlight as payroll, water as courier, and carbon as bricks. Suddenly, landscapes grew vertical. Green spires sprouted from formerly flat worlds. A shadow war began. Who could claim the sun and make others live on leftovers? Each centimeter mattered. A few leaves higher meant a fraction more energy, and a fraction more energy meant you could afford thicker walls, bigger crowns, deeper roots, a compounding advantage that turned meadows into skylines. But with height came headaches. If the workshop, the leaves, moved upward, who carried the water from the ground to the penthouse? If the sugar factories lived in the crown, who delivered lunch to the construction crews in the trunk and the miners in the roots? Distance, once trivial, became brutal. On the scale of a cell, a few meters is a continent. A tall tree is a planet. This is where trees got cunning. They reorganized their entire bodies into two empires of flow. Inward from a razor-thin band of stem cells, they laid down pipes that would soon die with honor, tubes built for one task: lifting water and minerals up. Outward from that same band, they wove living cables to ferry sugar and messages around. Between those directions, up and around, stood the slimmest command center in nature, a living ring steering a dead city. The Sky Wars didn't just select for strength, they selected for patience. Wood let plants think in decades, then centuries. Each season they added a new layer to their tower, wrapping life around yesterday's scaffolding. The structure thickened, the crown widened, the roots negotiated deeper, and the balance sheet tipped toward stability. What started as a scramble for sunlight became a philosophy of construction. Slow, layered, redundant. If you had walked through those early forests, you'd have felt a new kind of quiet. Less meadow chatter, more cathedral hush. The wind no longer raced across a flat plain. It braided itself through columns. Shadows became architecture, and beneath that shade, soils began to change. Fallen leaves stitched a blanket. Fungi took the night shift. Rocks softened at the edges. Water lingered. Height didn't just steal light. It made habitat. Still, nothing about this was guaranteed. A taller body means more leverage for the wind to exploit, more distance for supplies to travel, more surface for enemies to invade. To survive, trees had to turn weakness into wisdom. They learned to bend without breaking, to store without hoarding, to route around damage, and to treat death as a structural upgrade. The solution was radical and a little morbid. Keep the living parts thin, nimble, and in charge. Let the dead parts do the heavy lifting forever. So when you look up at a canopy now, don't just see leaves stealing sunlight from the air. See a strategy perfected over hundreds of millions of tries. Invent a better beam. Stack it patiently. Move water with the sky. Move sugar with living wires. And turn yesterday's bodies into today's backbone. The trees won the height war, not by sprinting, but by layering, a climb built out of time. Take a slow breath and picture the trunk in cross-section. Not a bullseye, but a city. At the center, vast districts of quiet infrastructure. At the very edge, a glowing ring of control rooms. That glowing edge is the cambium, the thinnest command center in nature, a circular strip of stem cells only millimeters thick, making choices that shape a giant. The cambium runs two construction lines at once. Inward, it promotes workers to a glorious, one-way career. Become xylem. At first, these cells look ordinary, living, soft, busy. Then the training takes a turn. Lignin floods their walls like poured stone. They hollow themselves out, dismantle organelles, and finally embrace programmed death. In dying, they become perfect pipes, tracheids and vessels, stacked end to end like a bundle of microscopic straws. Multiply that by billions, glue it with lignin, and you have wood, a load-bearing, water-lifting lattice that never sleeps because it doesn't need to. The dead carry the weight, so the living can stay small and nimble. Outward, the cambium assigns a subtler mission. Weave the phloem, the living logistics layer. Here, certain cells, sieve elements, sacrifice their command centers, digesting parts of themselves, even the nucleus, to free space for cargo. They don't die, but they surrender independence. Beside each sieve element stands a companion cell, a kind of personal life support station that supplies energy, instructions, and repairs through fine channels. Together, they form living cables that ferry sugars from sources, leaf factories, to sinks, roots, buds, wounds, seeds. The phloem is not just a food truck. It's a postal service for hormones and distress signals, a coordination line that keeps the far ends of the tree in conversation. Wrapping all of this is another production line with a brutal job description: build bark. Those outer cells, born just beyond the phloem, also march toward a purposeful death, becoming armor against insects, sunscorch, fungi, and teeth. Bark is not a decorative jacket. It's the shield that lets the living ring do its work. A careless bike lock, a weed whacker kiss, a hammock rope without a strap. Each can carve through this armor and into the cambium, the tree's beating border. A narrow wound looks small to us. To a tree, it's a severed highway. Back inside the trunk, the inward xylem never stops arriving. Year after year, the cambium lays down new plumbing beside the old, pushing the living ring outward. The older conduits thicken, clog, or get repurposed with resins and preservatives. The newest, brightest band under the bark, sapwood, handles most of the water lift. The result is a layered city, fresh pipes at the edge, veteran structure deeper in, and further still, a darkened heart that carries no water, but carries the building itself. We'll walk those halls soon. It's hard not to admire the elegance of the bargain. The tree keeps its vital tissues as thin as possible. Cheap to maintain, easy to defend, quick to reroute, while delegating strength to the honorable dead. Life manages, death bears. The ledger balances. Hold that mental cross-section a second longer. A halo of living managers steering a fortress of ancestors. Every spring, the halo divides. Every season, it appoints new pillars and new couriers. Every year, it steps outward a fraction, wrapping today's decisions around yesterday's bones. That's not just growth, it's governance. Stand beneath a canopy at noon and point your eyes upward. Nothing seems to move, just light, leaf, and blue. But the tree above you is running an elevator so powerful, it defeats gravity with silence. The elevator has 3 parts: leaves that pull, pipes that hold, and water that refuses to let go of itself. Leaves that pull. Each leaf is a thin factory with tiny adjustable doors called stomata. When a leaf opens them to take in carbon dioxide, water escapes as vapor. That escape, transpiration, isn't a leak, it's the engine. Every molecule that slips away tugs on the long chain of water behind it, the way pulling one bead tugs the next on a string. Pipes that hold. Inside the trunk, billions of xylem conduits, straws made from once living cells, form continuous columns from root to leaf. They are narrow, clean, and mostly air-free. Narrow matters. The tighter the pipe, the harder it is for bubbles to form and break the chain. Clean matters. A single pocket of air in the wrong place can block a conduit like a cork in a bottle. Water that refuses to let go. Water molecules cling to each other, cohesion, and to the walls of the conduits, adhesion. Together, these forces create tension, a negative pressure in the columns. That can pull water far higher than any garden pump could push. You can't see this tension, but you can feel its consequences. Under a thermal camera, leaves often read cooler than nearby stone, because that's the leaf touching the column. The sun does the rest, fueling evaporation, which fuels the pull, which fuels the rise. No pistons, no valves, just physics harnessed by anatomy. Why it works at scale. Human machines struggle to suck water very high because negative pressure invites boiling and bubbles. Trees dodge this by using many tiny, sealed conduits. Each is a risk-managed pathway. Together, they're a redundant network. If a few fail, most keep working. A river doesn't stop because one rivulet dries. A minute in the life of a column. High sun, stomata open, columns tighten, flow surges. Late afternoon, demand eases, tension relaxes, roots catch up. Night, stomata close, pressures reset. Refills may occur where conduits were stressed. It is not a pump's thump-thump. It's a living breath, wide at noon, calm by dusk. A street-level experiment. Place your palm near a healthy, sunlit leaf. You won't feel a breeze, but a thermal camera would show a faint halo of coolth as vapor diffuses. On a row of street trees, that invisible halo scales up to cooler sidewalks, cooler facades, calmer tempers. We call it shade, but the real gift is evaporation, limits, and failure modes. When the air is hot and dry, leaves must choose: open wide for carbon and risk losing too much water, or crack the doors and conserve. at the cost of growth. If tension outruns supply, microbubbles can snap into existence, cavitation, interrupting a conduit. Trees route around, isolate, or later repressurize where they can. The system is resilient, but not invincible. Hold that in mind. An elevator run by thirst, columns built of honored dead, and molecules holding hands across a city of straws. In the next chapter, we'll push this system to its edge, watching what drought does inside the pipes, how trees triage their sugars when income falls, and why a single bubble can turn a whisper into a cough. Walk into a lumber yard and you'll smell it before you see it. Resin, tannin, a sweetness edged with earth. That scent is the chemistry of heartwood, the deep core of a trunk where pipes retire from service and become something sterner, a spine. Here's the sequence. The newest, pale band just under the bark is sapwood, fresh xylem conduits still moving water. Season by season, as the cambium lays down new plumbing at the edge, yesterday's sapwood drifts inward. Some conduits clog with gums, others soak with preservatives. Flow slows, duties change. The tissue darkens and stiffens into heartwood, a fortress of the tree keeps the living, fragile work, water lift and sugar talk near the perimeter where it can be repaired and replaced. It assigns strength to the honored dead inside, where rot is held at bay by resins and chemistry. Life manages, death bears. The building stands because yesterday stayed to help. Growth rings keep score. A narrow ring whispers drought. A wide ring remembers abundance. A furrow or stain might mark a fire, a beetle year, a lightning kiss. Dendrochronologists read these lines the way archivists read margins, notes from seasons you and I never met. A single beam in a ceiling can align timelines across valleys, bridging lost years like a zipper. Heartwood changes the math of time. A creature with bone must constantly repair what it breaks by moving. A tree can afford to be patient. It adds a new layer, wraps it in next year's layer, and so on, laminating time into structure. The result is not invincibility, but a kind of poised longevity. A storm can still wrench a trunk. A fungus can still find a weakness. But season after season, the core resists, the edge renews, and the whole learns to carry yesterday gracefully. You can feel this architecture under your hand. On a stump, the outer pale rings smudge your fingers. Soft, a little damp, ready to serve. The inner rings look burnished, tight-grained, sometimes glowing with amber veins. That's preserved memory. If you could shrink and walk those halls, you'd find no valves hissing, no pumps chugging, just columns upon columns of silent supports, the city's cathedral of the dead. And yet, the tree remains exquisitely alive at its rim, a millimeter of error, a mower scar, a rope biting the bark, can interrupt the living belt that supervises everything. It's a strange arrangement, immortality, contingent on a delicate border. Respecting that border is how a neighborhood keeps its shade for another generation. So the trunk is not a stick, it's a ledger. The outer edge writes in the present tense, new pipes, fresh bark, this year's plans. The middle keeps the archive, and the heart signs the budget for the wind, bearing leverage the way a good bridge bears weather, flexing, holding, remembering. Kneel at the drip line of a tree where rain falls off the outermost leaves and pinch the soil. It looks ordinary, but this is the tree's trading floor. Damp grains of mineral, threads of life, corridors of air and water. Above, the crown is a factory. Below, the roots are a market. First principles: hunt, hold, and bargain. Roots do 3 jobs at once. They hunt, exploring in fractal patterns for water and ions lodged in rock dust. They hold, anchoring a wind-leveraged tower against storms. And they bargain, exchanging carbon sugars for services they can't perform alone. A root tip isn't just a straw. It's a negotiator with a helmet, mining rock with patience. Stone looks invincible, but at root scale, it's a slow cube of potential. Fine roots ooze organic acids that nudge nutrients free. Phosphorus from apatite, potassium from mica, trace metals from stubborn lattices. Water moves along tiny pressure differences from wet pores to drier ones near the root, carrying dissolved ions into the plant. It's chemistry with a metronome set to season, not second. The fungal extension, mycorrhizae. Then comes the master move. Roots recruit mycorrhizal fungi, cloaking themselves in white lace that reaches where roots cannot, into sub-millimeter pores and micro-caverns of soil. The deal is ancient and fair. The tree pays sugars. The fungi deliver water and nutrients, especially phosphorus and nitrogen. Hyphae weave from root to root, sometimes within one tree, sometimes linking several species, forming a shifting bazaar. Signals leak across this web, whispers of insect attack, chemical hints that alter leaf chemistry before the first bite lands. It's not a fairy tale internet. It's a mesh of trade routes with toll booths and customs. Soil is not dirt. It's architecture. Good soil has structure, aggregates that feel like cottage cheese under your fingers. Between them, pores for air, channels for water, galleries for microbes. Compaction crushes these rooms into a flat tenement. No air, poor drainage, roots gasping. That's why a tree can fail in a parking lot planter and thrive on the other side of the fence. Volume and structure decide destiny more than fertilizer does. How roots spend their carbon. When water is abundant and leaves are flush with sugar, roots invest, branching into new territory, thickening transport lines, outsourcing even more reach to fungi. In lean times, trees triage. They shed the finest, most expensive roots first, retreating to a core network that can be kept alive on a tight budget. The below-ground city breathes with the seasons, expanding after rains, consolidating in drought, grafts, neighbors, and gray area generosity. Roots of the same species sometimes graft, sharing sapwood and sugar. Across species, the fungal market brokers trades that look like generosity from above. One healthy crown shading and, in a sense, subsidizing a weaker neighbor. But markets turn when budgets tighten. In drought, the web favors the reliable payer, just as any marketplace would. Beneath the leaf-light democracy, there is accounting. What this means on a sidewalk. Give a tree a small hole in concrete, and it will try. Give it a connected trench or structural soil cells under the pavement, and it will succeed. Roots don't want to lift sidewalks. They want room. We force them to the surface by denying depth and width. Plan for soil volume like you plan for water mains. Quietly, generously, before problems appear. The gardener's cheat codes. Mulch with leaves or wood chips. You're funding the fungal workforce and buffering soil temperature. Water deep and slow. Then wait. Oxygen must return between cycles. Keep mulch off the trunk. The cambium is a thin vein, not a fire hydrant. If you must improve soil around an established tree, think air spade and compost top dressing, not rototilling and miracle mixes that turn the root zone into a patchwork of pots. A scene to carry with you. Imagine the canopy above as a green parliament arguing about light, while the ground below is a marketplace humming about water and minerals. The trunk is the embassy between them. Steels signed in darkness determine the tone of the speeches in the sun. Look at a mature crown in a gale. It doesn't just shake, it reconfigures. Leaves twist edge on, petioles pivot like micro-gimbals. Outer twigs yield, while inner wood holds. A tree is not a pole, it's a tapered cantilever with sails that can furl themselves in seconds. The choreography of a gust. At the first push, the outermost, youngest twigs, light, springy, and sacrificial, absorb energy. They whip and shed turbulence, so the main boughs behind them see less force than the open wind would suggest. The crown narrows, lowering drag, the way a flock of birds tightens in a turn. Branch insertions aren't random either. Many are spaced to reduce resonance, so the trunk doesn't fall into a catastrophic rhythm. Wood that learns by swaying. Trees don't send steel beams to the site. They grow material where stress repeats. Along the grain, wood is astonishingly strong. Across it, flexible. A sapling allowed to move in wind builds thicker walls and better fiber alignment than one staked rigidly. That's why good stakes are temporary. A trunk must practice being a trunk. Remove the braces too late, and the first big storm writes the refund policy. Asymmetry is a language, not a flaw. On a slope or by the coast, trunks often thicken on the stress side. In conifers, the compression wood, on the leeward side, lays down with a different microarchitecture. In many broadleaf trees, tension wood forms on the windward side, pulling back like living guy wires. The silhouette may look lopsided, but the math underneath is elegant. Add material where leverage is cruel. Roots as the hidden keel. Wind throw. Trees ripped from the ground usually tells a soil story. Wide, uncompacted rooting volumes act like a deep keel on a sailboat. A narrow boxed pit is a skate on ice. After long rain, soil loses friction and roots can't grip. After long drought, fine roots shrink and the outer soil dries to dust. Different path, same risk. The trunk's grace above depends on generosity below. Pruning that helps, pruning that harms. Smart pruning creates structure. One clear leader, well-spaced scaffold branches, smaller subordinate limbs tucked in. Removing a few strategic branches can reduce sail area and torsional load, but lion tailing, stripping inner foliage and leaving a tuft at the end, makes a lever, not a ladder. It moves weight outward, increasing bending moments. The rule is simple. Keep foliage distributed along the branch, like dampers on a bridge, not all at the tip like a hammer. The storm you don't see. Not all failure is loud. Microfractures accumulate where bark inclusions trap moisture, or where two codominant leaders rub. A hot, dry day with a sudden squall finds those weaknesses. What looks like bad luck is often deferred accounting. Small cuts to the cambium from string trimmers, mulch piled against bark inviting decay, compacted soil from delivery trucks. Storms collect the invoices. Design lessons we can steal. Build for grace under load. Many small conduits instead of one giant pipe. Multiple load paths rather than a single point of failure. Let systems self-tune. Feedback loops that add strength where stress repeats. Keep the keel big. Invest early and invisibly in foundations, soil volume, drainage, root pathways, rather than overspecking the visible column. Street corner proof. On a boulevard with identical species, you'll notice after a squall that losses cluster where sidewalks pinch pits, where new asphalt crowns channel water away from the roots, or where buildings funnel wind into a jet. The tree that survived isn't braver, It had better geometry, more soil, better drainage, kinder aerodynamics. So when wind leans into a city, the trees that prevail aren't the stiffest. They're the ones rehearsed by small winds, strengthened by honest sway, rooted in generous soil, and trimmed with respect for physics. Planting a tree is not a photo op. It's an engineering decision with a 50-year warranty. Do it right, and the crown will outlive your mortgage. Do it wrong, and you'll buy a decade of disappointment and a storm's worth of firewood. Step 1. Choose the future, not the catalog. Start with the site, then pick the species. What will summers feel like in 10 to 30 years? Hotter, drier, windier, saltier from winter roads? Is the soil sandy and quick-draining? Or clay that holds water like a saucer? How tall can a tree be without tangling power lines or broiling a south window? Shortlist species that match the mature height, spread, heat zone, drought flood tolerance, and pest pressure. Mix species across the street or block. Diversity isn't aesthetic fuss, it's insurance. Step 2. Size is a trap. A smaller, younger tree, whips, number 5 to number 15 containers, often outgrows a huge boxed specimen after a few years because it transplants with a bigger percentage of its roots. Large trees look heroic on day 1. Small ones win year 5. Step 3. Dig for roots, not for pride. The planting pit should be 2 to 3 times the root ball's width and only as deep as the root ball's height. Roughen the walls so roots can escape. A smooth, polished hole is a clay pot in the ground. Find the root flare, the subtle widening where trunk becomes root, and make sure it sits at or slightly above grade. Bury the flare, and you are setting a timer on rot and girdling roots. Step 4. Backfill like a realist. Use the native soil you dug out. Don't create a luxury potting mix in the hole. Roots will circle in comfort and never claim the neighborhood. Break clods, remove plastic, wire, and burlap from the top and sides of bald and burlapped trees. Water the backfill in layers to settle it without stamping air out of the soil. Step 5. Water like a tree, not a tomato. Deep, slow, and infrequent. The goal is to soak the entire root zone, then let oxygen return before the next cycle. In the first growing season, think weekly soak in normal weather. In heat waves, add a midweek top-up. Move emitters outward over time. Roots chase the wet edge. Step 6. Mulch donut, not volcano. Lay 5 to 8 centimeters of wood chips or shredded leaves in a wide ring. Keep a clean moat around the trunk. No mulch touching bark. A mulch volcano traps moisture on the cambium's doorstep and invites decay. Refresh annually. Let fungi eat and build soil. Step 7. Stake only if you must. Is wind just fierce or root systems are small? Use low, flexible ties that allow sway. Remove within 1 year. A trunk that never practices balance will fail its road test. Step 8. First 3 years rule. These are the establishment years. Prioritize water, mulch, and structure pruning. Avoid heavy fertilization. Without water and oxygen, it's perfume on a closed window. Keep string trimmers and mowers away. Install a physical guard if necessary. One careless scar can sever a ring of life. Step 9. Prune for a leader, not for emptiness. Choose a single dominant leader early. Select scaffold branches that are well spaced vertically and around the trunk. Make small, clean cuts. Never strip inner foliage into a lion tail. You're building a ladder, not a lever. Step 10. Design with soil volume in mind. On sidewalks and plazas, plan for connected rooting space. Structural soil cells or linked trenches turn isolated pits into a shared basement. Roots don't heave concrete out of spite, they surface when you deny them depth and width. Heat dome protocol. Quick insert. 2 days before extreme heat, deep water to charge the soil. For brand new trees, add a light shade sail on the hottest exposure. In enclosed courtyards with low fungal pressure, a brief evening mist can lower leaf demand without drenching. Street corner checklist. Carry it in your head. Root flare, visible? Check. Mulch touching bark? Tick. Pull it back. Emitters at drip line, not the trunk? Check. Guard against string trimmers? Check. Stakes off by year 1? Check. 1 clear leader? Check. Why this matters. A well-planted tree is not a nice-to-have. It is a cooling unit, a stormwater device, a noise baffle, a habitat tower, and a mood regulator. The return compounds for decades, and the failure compounds too. Plant for 2050, and you buy a quieter, cooler, calmer street for 2030, 2040, and everything after. Hot noon, wind like a hairdryer, air so dry it seems to drink you back. This is when a tree's calm, elegant plumbing faces its hardest exam. The leaf wants carbon, the sky offers glare, and the soil begins to say, not today. What happens next is not panic, it's policy. The budget meeting in a leaf. Stomata are the doors where business gets done. Open wide and you pull in CO2. Good for sugar, bad for water. Close tight and you save water. Good for survival, bad for growth. There is no perfect setting, only trade-offs that change minute by minute. Sensors in the leaf, light, temperature, humidity, even hormone signals. Nudge those doors in tiny increments, trying to thread the needle. Enough carbon to keep the books balanced, not so much water loss that the columns snap. When tension goes too far, inside the xylem, water is under negative pressure, a taut chain held together by cohesion. Drought raises that tension until one conduit hits a weak spot, and pop, a cavitation bubble forms. The chain breaks, the elevator coughs. One bubble doesn't doom a tree. There are countless parallel straws, but let enough conduits embolize, and leaves wilt, twigs crispen, and the crown retreats to a smaller version of itself. Trees don't just hope, they reroute. A blocked vessel can be fenced off with gums. Flow diverts into neighboring conduits. At night or during cooler, humid spells, some species can restore function in stressed pathways as gradients relax and water creeps back in. The goal isn't to heal every pipe, it's to keep enough of the network online for another sunrise. Sugar, with strings attached. Meanwhile, in the phloem, the tree runs a triage protocol. Sugars move from sources, productive leaves, to sinks, roots, cambium, developing buds, wounds. In good times, everyone gets fed. In drought, the cue changes. First priority, the living ring, cambium, phloem, that keeps options open, then the fine roots that sustain the mineral contract, then defense chemistry, so nothing eats you while you're down. Parenchyma cells in wood and roots act like pantries, releasing stored starch to bridge the gap. If austerity stretches into seasons, budgets turn skeletal. Less new wood, fewer flowers, delayed leaf out, early leaf drop. The tree isn't lazy, it's conserving its future. Signals travel faster than drought does. Hormones like abscisic acid surge from roots, sensing dry horizons, instructing leaves to tighten stomata before the worst hits. Defensive compounds rise at the prospect of bark beetles and borers, whose attacks often follow heat. A stressed tree that communicates early can shed expendable tips, toughen tissues, and buy time, like closing outer rooms in a mansion to heat the core. Why a little extra water sometimes backfires. Daily sips keep the topsoil damp and teach roots to loiter near the surface, the first place to dry. Better is deep, infrequent soaking that wets the whole zone. and then lets oxygen return. Roots chase that deep reservoir and build drought muscle. Think fill the battery rather than keep the LED on. A city block example. Two identical street trees, same species, same age. One got nightly sprinklers misting the trunk and rotting the base, mulch piled to the bark, inviting decay, and a narrow pit that trapped roots like wrists in cuffs. The other got a wide mulch donut, emitters at the drip line, and a trench connecting pits beneath the sidewalk. First heat dome. The spritzed tree looked good at breakfast and ghosted by dinner. The trenched one drooped at noon, recovered by dusk, and set buds on time and fall. Same weather, different plumbing resilience. What survival looks like from the sidewalk. You'll notice leaf rolling, reduces surface area, selective shedding of the sunniest outer leaves, and a pause in shoot extension. On some species, inner leaves stay green while outer flags yellow and drop, a tactical retreat that lowers demand without abandoning the whole front. If drought lifts in time, new spurts arrive later, modest but confident. Your lever, demand management. During heat waves, shade the hottest exposure of a newly planted tree with a light sail. Move water outward as the crown expands, and never mulch against bark. After the event, resist the urge to prune dead-looking tips immediately. Give the tree a full cycle. Many will backfill with late-season buds or push latent ones once the elevator stops coughing. In the end, drought doesn't merely test a tree's strength. It tests its governance, how wisely it rations, how flexibly it roots, how quickly it signals, how patiently it recovers. Picture the soil not as brown noise, but as a night city from space, threads of light connecting neighborhoods. Those threads are mycorrhizal hyphae, fungal filaments tens to hundreds of times thinner than a root hair, slipping into pores roots can't reach, tapping micro-reservoirs of water, teasing loose atoms from stone. Trees bankroll this network with sugar. Fungi pay back with nutrients and stability. Two main business models. Arbuscular mycorrhizae, AM, the ancient partnership. Hyphae enter root cells and form tiny branching arbors, exchange booths where phosphorus and micronutrients swap hands for glucose. Common on grasses and many broadleaf trees in warm soils. Ectomycorrhizae, ECM, the wraparound guild. Hyphae sheath the root tips and thread between root cells rather than inside them, secreting acids and enzymes that mine nitrogen and phosphorus from tougher substrates. Dominant on many temperate and boreal trees, oaks, beeches, pines, birches. Those mushrooms after rain, often ECM fruiting bodies, receipts popping up from the ledger below. Why trees pay in sugar. Mining rock is slow. Phosphorus moves like molasses in soil. Nitrogen hides in stubborn bonds. By outsourcing, too, fungi with massive surface area and targeted chemistry, trees trade a slice of photosynthetic profit for reliable access to scarce goods, especially during droughts or early spring when roots are sluggish. It's vertical integration, but outsourced. Insurance against thirst. Hyphae stretch the effective root system like capillaries, redistributing water from cooler, shaded soil pockets to the thirstiest tips. In tiny fibers, capillary forces keep films of water moving where bulk flow would stall. On a scorching afternoon, that can mean the difference between a leaf that curls and a leaf that keeps negotiating with the sky. Signals cross the counter. This bazaar moves more than atoms. Trees under insect attack, leak warning chemicals. Neighbors connected by the same network sometimes preload defenses. No, it's not a wise elder sending memos across a forest internet. It's a leaky market where chemical gradients and shared plumbing create early warning side effects that evolution then leans on. Neighborhood effects. Diverse plantings create diverse guilds of fungi. That matters. Different fungi excel under different temperatures, pH levels, and moisture regimes. A block with mixed species is a portfolio. A block with one species is a bet. When summers flip hotter or winters swing weirder, portfolios ride it out with fewer margin calls. What breaks the market? Compaction. Hyphae hate crushed pores. Lose structure and you lose lanes. Chronic fertilizer baths. Oversupplying cheap nitrogen and phosphorus can shut down trade. Why hire miners when the buffet is free? Roots atrophy. Partnerships atrophy. Shock tolerance drops. Bart to molds volcanoes. Moisture against cambium invites decay and starves the living ring. The network can't save a tree whose border has been breached. Sterile topsoil imports. Bagged mixes without inoculum reset the board to zero. A thin layer is fine. A moat of inert fluff isolates rather than connects. How to fund the right economy. Mulch with the future. Wood chips and leaf litter equals food for fungi. They knit chips into soil glues, boosting aggregation, porosity, and water-holding capacity. Water deep and pause. Continuous drizzle drowns airways and rewards shallow rooting. Soak, then let oxygen back. Fungi breathe too. Plant with neighbors. Clusters of compatible species, AM with AM, ECM with ECM, or deliberately mixed mosaics. Establish networks faster than loners in decorative gravel. Keep soil continuous. Linked trenches and structural soil cells under pavements turn isolated pits into a shared basement where roots and fungi can commute. A tale of two medians. On one boulevard, ornamental gravel, fabric, and drip lines pinned to trunks kept the soil hot and sealed. Trees grew like hostages. Across town, a median with chipped prunings, linked soil volumes, and autumn leaves left in place built a fungal carpet in 3 seasons. The second site rode a heat dome with leaf margins browned. The first cooked to twigs. Same species, same city, different economy. Your pocket test. Scoop a handful of soil from under a good mulch after rain. If it crumbles into moist aggregates and smells like clean mushrooms and tea, the market is open. If it smears into paste or blows away as dust, you're in a food desert. Keep this frame. A tree's crown negotiates with light, its roots, and fungi negotiate with stone and weather. Respect that commerce, and you buy resilience you can't see until a bad summer makes it obvious. If planting is a ceremony, maintenance is the marriage. Not flashy, not loud, just small, regular choices that keep the elevator humming and the living ring unbothered. Guard the trunk like a wrist artery. The cambium sits just under bark, a thin belt that feeds and directs everything. A single string trimmer scar is not a scuff. It's a severed lane on the freeway. Install a simple plastic guard or a low ring of stones to keep mowers back. Hang hammocks or signs with wide straps, never thin rope. Treat the bark as skin, because it is. Move the water as the crown moves. Emitters pinned near the trunk make toddlers of trees, dependent and shallow-rooted. As canopies widen, slide irrigation outward toward the drip line. Water should soak the whole root zone, not just darken a circle of mulch. Think fill the aquifer, not wet the collar. Deep and infrequent beats daily sips. A slow, hour-long soak every week or two, site and season-dependent, charges the soil battery, then oxygen returns between cycles. Daily spritzing teaches roots to hover near the surface, the first place to dry and heat. Mulch donut, not volcano. Heap a 5 to 8 centimeter ring of wood chips or shredded leaves away from the trunk. Mulch touching bark is a wet bandage on a vein. replenish yearly. Let fall leaves feed the fungi. That's payroll for your underground staff. Soil is structure. Restore it gently. Where cars, feet, or equipment have compacted the root zone, don't till. You'll shred roots. Use an air spade to loosen soil between major roots. Fold in compost and remulch. Over months, fungi knit it into aggregates. Pores reopen. Roots breathe again. Prune for scaffold, not emptiness. In the first 3 years, prioritize structure. One clear leader, well-spaced scaffold branches, good branch angles. Make small, clean cuts. Never lion tail, stripping inner foliage, or top trees, architectural vandalism. Mature trees, light. Periodic structural pruning by a pro is cheaper than emergency removals after storms. Stakes are training wheels. Remove them. If you had to stake at planting, take stakes off within a year. Sway signals the trunk to lay down stronger wood. A tree braced too long is a runner who never left the treadmill. Keep hardware out of the bark. Holiday lights, bike locks, slackline rigs, all fine with protection. Slip a hose or foam sleeve under straps. Check annually. Remove anything that's biting in. Heat wave protocol, field version. 2 days before a forecast heat dome, deep water. For brand new trees, add a light shade sail on the west-southwest side. In sheltered courtyards with low fungal pressure, a brief evening mist can lower leaf demand. After the event, wait before pruning dead-looking tips. Many shoots rebound once tension eases. Winter and storm prep. Before the high wind season, inspect for co-dominant leaders, included bark, crossing, rubbing branches, and deadwood. Address small problems early. Storms collect invoices. After heavy snow ice, do not shake laden branches. That can snap fibers. Let thaw and gravity work. Prune cleanly later if needed. Pests and problems are often symptoms. Bark borers, cankers, random dieback. These usually follow stress, drought, compaction, chronic wet feet. Fix site conditions first. In a healthy tree with good soil and water regime, chemistry is an assist, not a cure. Your 5-minute monthly walk around. Mulch touching bark? Pull it back. Root flare visible? Good. If buried, plan a gentle excavation. Emitters at the drip line? Slide them if not. New wounds or oozing? Photograph now. Watch weekly. Stakes, ties biting in? Loosen or remove. This is not glamorous work. It's better. It's cheap heroism. A guard here, a moved emitter there, a pulled-back mulch ring. Each is a vote for shade in August and calm in a storm. Trees fail less from mystery than from bad assumptions. Here are the greatest hits and what to do instead. Myth 1. Bigger stock equals faster success. A huge box tree looks heroic on day 1, but often carries a small percentage of its original roots. It sulks, demands constant water, and can lag for years. A smaller, younger tree with a higher root-to-crown ratio usually catches and passes the big one by year 3 to 5. Do instead choose right-size stock with a visible root flare, correct circling roots at planting, and invest savings in soil volume and irrigation. Myth 2. Daily watering shows love. Daily sips keep the top 5 to 10 centimeters wet, training roots to hover where heat and drought hit first. Do instead water deep and infrequently to charge the whole root zone, then pause so oxygen can return. Slide emitters outward as the canopy expands. Myth 3. Mulch volcanoes protect trunks. Mulch piled against bark traps moisture, rots the cambium, and invites pests. Do instead mulch donut, not volcano. 5 to 8 centimeters deep, not touching the trunk. Replenish yearly. Myth 4. Fertilizer fixes struggle. If soil is compacted or roots are waterlogged, fertilizer is perfume on a closed window. It can also suppress mycorrhizae by replacing the very nutrients fungi trade for. Do instead, fix site conditions first. Structure, decompact with air spade, drainage, organic matter, mulch. Fertilize judiciously only when a real deficiency is documented. Myth 5. Any tree is better than none. A block of identical trees is a single bet. One new pest, or heat wave they all hate, can wipe the street. Do instead, plant diversity across species and families. Diversity is neighborhood insurance. Myth 6. Topping reduces risk. Topping triggers frantic, weak shoots and decay at cut sites, raising long-term failure risk. Do instead, provide connected rooting volume, linked trenches, structural soil cells. Design pavements that share load while allowing roots below. Myth 9. Gravel plus fabric equals low maintenance. Hot rock and geotextile cook and suffocate the root zone, repel organic inputs, and sever fungal lanes. Do instead, wood chip mulch refreshed yearly. It cools soil, feeds fungi, and improves structure. Myth 10. Prune hard now. It'll bounce back. Heavy, out-of-season cuts during stress bleed reserves and invite sun-scald and decay. Do instead, small, timely cuts with a clear objective, structure, clearance, light, thinning. During drought, heat, defer major work. Myth 11. Soil is soil. Clay, loam, sand, each handles water, air differently. A hole backfilled with lavish potting mix becomes a bathtub or a pot in ground where roots circle. Do instead, backfill with native soil. Fix structure across the whole site, not just the hole. Roughen walls, never glaze them. Myth 12. Looks fine equals is fine. Stress often hides a season or two ahead of visible decline. Girdling roots, buried flares, slow cambium rot under mulch. Do instead, monthly 5-minute walk-around, flare visible, mulch off bark. Emitters at drip line, new oozing cracks, ties biting in. Photograph, then act. The money math, one smart choice, proper planting depth, soil volume, or a $5 trunk guard, beats a $1,000 rescue later. Most mystery deaths are invoice collections for small mistakes repeated. Stand on a ridgeline above a large forest at noon. You don't see rivers, but you're standing over one. From crown to sky, countless leaves are exhaling a cool, invisible stream, transpired water vapor that drifts upward, gathers, and sometimes returns as rain. Forests don't just store water, they circulate it. 1 billion tiny fountains. Each stoma is a microscopic spring. Open for carbon, it releases vapor. Release enough vapor across a landscape, and you humidify the boundary layer of air. That extra moisture changes how heat moves, how clouds form, and how later air parcels behave downwind. Trees become quiet humidity engines that soften daily temperature swings, cooler days, warmer nights. Why shade isn't the whole story. We credit trees for shade, correct? But their greatest local cooling often comes from evaporative drawdown, water absorbing heat as it becomes vapor. Pave a block and you trap heat. Canopy a block and you add a latent heat sink. That's why at eye level, a tree-lined street can feel like a different climate from the bare one across town. From neighborhood to cloud, lift enough vapor, seed enough convection, and you nudge cloud microphysics. In wet seasons, forests can recycle a notable fraction of their own rainfall. In dry seasons, they prime the air so that passing systems ring out more kindly. Remove canopy and the dial moves. Less humidity, harsher highs, sharper lows, feast or famine weather. Diversity as a water strategy. Different species open stomata under different conditions. Some keep sipping on hot afternoons. Others pause and resume at dusk. A mixed canopy spreads risk across behaviors, smoothing the neighborhood's water cash flow. Monocultures breathe and sink. Great, until the day the weather punishes their one shared habit. Edges, corridors, and continuity. A lone park cools itself. A connected corridor cools districts. Greenways that link blocks let moist air and cooler flows travel, extending benefits beyond the tree's drip line. In cities, think of trees as infrastructure segments. Gaps are like missing pipes in a water main. Stormwater you don't have to pay for. A mature crown is a living umbrella. Leaves intercept rain, slowing drops so soil can drink instead of slough. Trunks route water down bark. Roots stitch soil so it resists slumps and floods. Every liter held on site is a liter your drains don't have to panic about. Planting is flood policy. Planting with hydrology in mind. Right tree, right wet, in swales and low spots. Choose species with flood tolerance. On berms and near hot facades, pick drought-hardy species. Layered canopies. Tall trees, understory trees, shrubs, and ground cover create multi-story interception, slowing water from sky to soil. Soil first. Structural soils and linked pits transform sidewalks from flumes into sponges. Wind-aware siting. In dry climates, align shelter belts to slow desiccating winds and keep humidity from being stripped as fast as it forms. A block-scale thought experiment. Two identical neighborhoods. One scrapes leaves, rakes bare soil, installs gravel plus fabric, and dots in a single species. The other mulches, mixes species, links pits, and lets understory plants fill the shade. After a heat wave and a sudden storm, the first bakes and floods. The second tempers and sips. Cooler afternoons, slower runoff, fewer basement pumps humming at midnight. The civic translation. Call trees what they are. Distributed water-cooled chillers and modular stormwater tanks with bonus carbon, habitat, and beauty. Budget them like utilities, not decorations. The payoff arrives each summer afternoon, and every time the radar turns yellow. Walk up slowly. Don't stare, scan. Let the whole silhouette speak before you interrogate details. A healthy tree reads like good posture. Crown full, leader clear, taper confident from base to top. Now, step closer. Step 1, the base and the flare. Start where life meets soil. Can you see the root flare? That gentle widening where trunk becomes root. Good. If the trunk plunges straight into the ground, like a fence post, the flare is buried. A red flag for rot and girdling roots. Brush mulch back. If you find packed soil against bark, note it. That's a slow leak in the living ring's budget. Step 2, bark. Skin that tells stories. Run your eye, not your fingers. Look for fresh wounds, long vertical cracks, or dark, weeping streaks below branch unions. Small, sun-bleached scuffs from lawn tools. They're not scuffs, they're cambium injuries, tiny amputations. Mark them in your mind. If you see mushrooms hugging the lower trunk, don't panic, but do pay attention. Wood decay fungi often pick the weakest chapter to read aloud. Step 3, the trunk line. Follow the trunk upward. Is there one clear leader, or two codominant stems splitting like a slingshot? Codominants with included bark, a tight V with bark pinched inside, are future tear-outs in a storm. Note any flat shells where branches were topped in the past. Those are decay invitations the tree has to manage year after year. Step 4. Branch architecture. Healthy crowns look layered, not pom-pommed. Branches should emerge with decent angles, not sharp hooks. Beware lion tailing, bare inner branches with foliage only at the tips. That's a lever, not a ladder, and wind will do the math. Crossing or rubbing branches? That's a saw slowly working without a handle. One of them must give. Step 5. Leaves. The mood ring. Stand back again. Is the interior leafy or only the outer shell? Interior green means the tree kept its food factories close to the trunk. Outer only says it's living on the edge, literally. Are emitters still hugging the trunk like baby bottles, or have they migrated to the drip line where roots actually feed? Excavation scars. Newly poured sidewalks. Parked trucks on the critical root zone. These are the quiet crimes that show up 2 summers later. Step 7. Patterns over. Moments one odd leaf isn't a diagnosis. Patterns are. Photograph now. Recheck in 2 weeks. Then after a rain. Then after heat. If a crease deepens, a stain spreads, or a lean increases, the story is writing itself and asking you to edit. Your 60-second script, say it out loud as you scan. Flare visible, yes. Mulch touching bark, no. 1 liter, yes. Included bark, none. Interior leaves, present. Wounds, small. Sealed. Emitters at drip line. Root zone uncompacted. Posture upright. Okay, next tree. Why this matters. Early, small interventions are cheap heroism. Pull mulch off bark, loosen a tie, slide irrigation outward. Flag a codominant for structural pruning in the calm season. These cost minutes now, or thousands after a storm. Reading a tree isn't mysticism, it's literacy. And once you can read, you can rewrite the ending. A tree on your block is not decor. It is infrastructure. A water-cooled chiller, a stormwater tank, a sound baffle, a habitat tower, a mood stabilizer, funded by sunlight and a little care. Once you see it this way, ethics stops being abstract. It becomes a ledger. The civic ROI in plain feelings. Sit under a good canopy at 3 p.m. in late summer. Heart rate eases. Voices soften. Dogs stop sidestepping the sidewalk. That's evaporative cooling converting stress into composure. Meanwhile, the person who waters a curbside sapling after work is not a hobbyist. They're the night shift for a shared utility. The shopkeeper who pulls mulch back from the trunk is doing preventative maintenance. The contractor who fences a root zone before pouring a sidewalk is protecting a main line. Call it stewardship if you like. It's also operations. A small ethic. First, do no harm to the living ring. The cambium is a city's pulse wrapped in millimeters. Don't nick it with trimmers. Don't trap it under mulch. Don't cinch it with ropes. Treat bark as skin. If you must hang, strap wide. If you must tie, check yearly. Every tiny mercy compounds into decades of shade. A fair share contract. Trees pay us in microclimates, flood control, and quiet. We pay back with water during youth and drought, space beneath the pavement, and a promise not to sabotage the cambium. That's the deal. When we break it, when we bake soils with gravel and fabric, or bury flares or top crowns out of fear, the invoices arrive as hot afternoons, flooded basements, failing branches, and mystery removals. Budgets tell stories. So do stumps. 3 tiny habits that tilt a neighborhood. The mulch moat move. Once a month, check trunks. If mulch touches bark, pull it back to a clean donut. 30 seconds, long dividends. Slide the circle. Each season, Move emitters outward toward the drip line. Teach roots to explore, not hover. Guard the pulse. Wrap a simple trunk guard where mowers roam. Replace frayed ties. Remove old nails, wires, and holiday lines that started innocent and turned cruel. Language that unlocks budgets. When you speak to a city council, don't say, plant more trees. Say, expand our distributed cooling capacity and modular stormwater storage by X units. Protect existing assets with low-cost cambium guards. Link rooting pits to reduce pavement heave and emergency removals. Same leaves, stronger case. Justice grows in soil, too. Heat maps and canopy maps often trace the same lines as income and history. Plant where the map glows red, not just where photo ops are pretty. Choose species that thrive on the worst corners, salt, wind, glare, and back them with the soil volume and watering plan they deserve. Equity looks like shade at a bus stop in August. A promise you can keep. You can't fix climate alone. You can keep this trunk safe, this pit connected, this soil alive. Cities change when thousands of tiny promises stack, like growth rings wrapping last year with this year and this year with next. One day, the street feels different and no one remembers the single act, only the comfort. Closing the loop. The ethics here aren't lofty, they're tactile. A strap's width, a mulch ring's edge, a hose set to slow. If you carry one thought out the door, let it be this. The living ring is thin, the benefits are thick, and your hands decide which side wins. You don't need a forestry degree. You need a rhythm. Run this playbook, and your block gets cooler, calmer, and cheaper to maintain, quarter after quarter. The 10-minute monthly loop, all year. Walk, scan, nudge. Mulch moat check, pull mulch off the bark to form a clean donut, 5 to 8 centimeters deep, wide ring. Root flare sighting, 1 minute. Flare visible? Good. Buried. Plan a gentle hand tool excavation next visit. Trunk armor, 1 minute. String trimmer scars. Add repair a trunk guard. Remove biting zip ties, wires, lights. Irrigation drift, 2 minutes. Move emitters toward the drip line. Verify deep, slow cycles, not daily sips. Canopy posture, 2 minutes. 1 clear leader, no fresh cracks, oozing or rubbing limbs. Snap a photo for pattern tracking. Soil breath, 3 minutes. If the surface is crusted, compacted, gently roughen the top 2 to 3 centimeters and remulch, no digging near big roots. The quarterly deep dive, spring, structure and startup. Structural prune, light. Set 1 leader, space future scaffold branches, no topping, no lion tailing. Irrigation prime, test lines, fix leaks, schedule weekly deep soaks, site dependent. Soil feed, top dress 1 to 2 centimeters compost under mulch, not against bark. Summer, heat defense. Heat wave protocol, 48 hours before. Deep water to charge soil. Add a light shade sail W southwest on new trees, in enclosed courts. A brief evening mist only if fungal risk is low. Stop the daily spritz. Infrequent, soaking cycles beat shallow rituals. Fall, recovery and roots. Leaf equals payroll. Leave chopped leaves under canopy or mulched beds. This funds fungi. Root zone expansion. Link pits or loosen compacted bands with air spade plus compost where possible. Winter, storm prep. Risk walkthrough. Flag codominant leaders, included bark, deadwood. Schedule targeted reductions before storm season. Hardware audit. Remove aging straps, holiday wires, slacklines. Nothing biting into bark. New planting. First 36 months. Month 0, planting day. Root flare, at slightly above grade. Pit 2 to 3 times root ball width. Native backfill. Mulch donut. Low loose stakes if needed. Months 1 to 3. Weekly deep watering. Adjust emitters to the edge of the planting pit. Months 4 to 12. Bi-weekly deep soaks, site weather dependent. First structural prune, light at end of season. Year 2. Remove stakes, widen mulch, slide watering outward, inspect for circling roots surfacing. Year 3. Second light structure tune. Taper irrigation as roots prove depth. Celebrate. Establishment nearly complete. Fast response cards. Print these. Heat dome 3 steps. Deep water 48 hours prior. Add shade sail on west-southwest for new trees. Post-event. Don't rush prune crispy tips. Reassess after 1 full cycle. Drought month. 1 slow multi-hour soak to full root zone. Pause for oxygen. No trunk sprayers. Move water to drip line. Expand mulch by 30 to 50 centimeters radius. Storm week. Inspect leaders _unions. Reduce obvious levers. Secure site hardware. After snow ice, do not shake branches. Thaw first. Prune clean later. Small tools, big returns. Keep a tote 2 times trunk guards. 2 to 3 meters of. Wide tree straps plus foam sleeves. Hand pruners plus folding saw. For less than 2.5 centimeter cuts. Hose timer plus low flow soaker. 2 to 3 bags wood chips. Or access to chip pile. Chalk paint 4. Marking drip line and root zone. Neighborhood uplift. Simple, social, effective. Adopt a tree map. Free map. Shared doc with addresses, watering days, contact. QR on the stake. Link to a 1-page care card. Deep soak times mulch donut diagram. Chip coop. Coordinate a quarterly wood chip drop. Share the pile along the block. Soil cells pitch. When sidewalks are replaced, request linked pits, structural soil in the contract. Cheapest time to win decades of root room. Equity first. Prioritize red-hot, low-canopy streets for new plantings and care. Track what matters, so you keep doing it. 2 photos per season. Same angle. Watering log. Simple tick boxes. Canopy notes. Leader, wounds, pests, scorch. Heat, cool winds. IR temp snapshot. Electric bills anecdote. The 3 promise wrap. Protect the ring. No bark contact. Wide straps. Guards. Feed the soil. Mulch. Compost top dress. Decompact gently. Teach the roots. Deep, infrequent watering. Move the wet edge outward. Run this playbook, and you don't just keep a tree alive. You operate a distributed cooling and stormwater system that pays you back every hot afternoon and every heavy rain for decades. If you strip a tree down to its logic, you get a blueprint for surviving a turbulent century. Build with layers. Move resources wisely. Trade with neighbors. Let yesterday's strength carry today's risk. The trunk is memory turned into structure. The cambium is management that stays small and sharp. The leaves are factories that cool the street while paying the bills. The roots are diplomats turning stone into supper. Design principle 1. Let the dead hold the load so the living can think. Trees outsource strength to wood, the honored dead, so the living ring can stay nimble. Our cities can do the same. Let passive, low-energy materials carry heat and wind loads so the active systems can stay small, cheap, and smart. Design principle 2, redundancy over heroics. No single superpipe, a million tiny conduits. When one fails, the others flow. Resilient neighborhoods aren't one big park or one big tank. They're many small sponges, many small shades, many small channels connected into a system. Design principle 3, move what matters, where it matters, when it matters. Leaves open, not by ideology, but by math. Humidity, light, temperature, storage. Budgets shift hourly. Good stewardship does the same. Deep watering before heat. Shade when it buys survival. Pruning when it buys structure. Patience when a drought asks for it. Design principle 4. Markets beat mandates underground. Roots and fungi don't argue. They trade. If we feed soil life with leaves and wood chips, it pays back in porosity, water holding, and quiet fertility. If we pave and compact, the market closes and we spend cash to replace the free services we chased away. Design Principle 5. Small mercies compound. A strap's width, a mulch donut's edge, a guard around a cambium, an emitter slid outward. They look trivial alone. Stack them season after season, and the street cools, floods less, breaks less, smiles more. That's ring logic. Incrementalism with consequences. What this means for you tomorrow morning. Walk 1 block with a tote. Trunk guards, foam sleeves, hand pruners, soaker hose, 2 bags of chips. Fix 3 things in 10 minutes. Pull mulch off bark, move a line to the drip edge, shield a trunk. Text a neighbor a photo and a 1-line tip. That's how forests start in cities, not by decree, by habit. What this means for us in 10 years. A city that budgets trees as utilities, links pits under pavements, bans mulch volcanoes, and trains crews to read flares and unions will feel different in August and after storms. It will hum softer. Ambulances will run fewer heat calls. Basements will bail less. Squirrels and warblers will write their own small votes of confidence in the canopy. Stand again under your block's tallest crown. Breathe. You are inside an engine that moves rivers up a column without a pump, that turns yesterday's bodies into today's beams, that cools you with vapor and patience. The living ring at your fingertips is thin. The benefits around you are thick. Tilt your street with tiny acts, and this quiet giant will keep paying interest long after the news cycle moves on. Final cue. Protect 2 trunks. Plant 1 site-fit, diverse tree. Teach 3 people the mulch donut. Then watch the neighborhood change the way trees do. From the edge, inward, year by year. Place a fresh sunlit leaf beside a warm paving stone. To the naked eye, it's just green against glare. But if you listen with your body, you'll notice something tiny, yet profound. The leaf is cooler. It pays with vapor to purchase comfort for the block, each stoma a tiny fountain pulling heat out of the air in exchange for an invisible river running upward. Scale that across thousands of crowns and you have a silent air conditioner. Now, step back and look at the base. You'll see a subtle swelling where trunk becomes root. Proof the tree was set right. The root flare must be visible. If it's buried like a fence post, the future is buried with it. Just rake mulch away from the bark and leave a clean moat around the stem. You've protected a fragile border, the living ring, from constant moisture and rot. 10 seconds of work for many cooler summers. Water has its own memory. If you dribble a little every day at the trunk, roots will loiter in the hottest, shallowest soil, the first to dry out. But give 1 deep, slow soak. Let water permeate the root zone, then pause for air to return. And roots will follow the cool, wet edge downward and outward, growing strong. Teach a tree to drink like a tree, not like a windowsill houseplant. You'll see the difference after 1 heat spell. 1 tree wilts and recovers. The other turns crispy by evening. When wind rises, let the trunk practice its lesson. A tree tied rigid forever never learns to sway. Fibers don't thicken where they should. Stake low and loose so it can move. Then remove the braces after a season, like taking off training wheels. Strength comes from rehearsal, not restraint. Scoop a handful of soil beneath the canopy. If it crumbles into little curds, those are rooms for air and water. If it smears like paste or collapses into lifeless grit, someone has flattened living architecture. A few inches of wood chips and leaf litter, plus time, and a mist-fine web of fungi will stitch those rooms back together. When we say feed the tree, we're really rebuilding the house of soil. On brutal, hot, dry days, water columns inside the xylem are stretched so tight that a weak spot can pop a microscopic bubble. Cavitation, a small cough in a grand quiet hall. The tree doesn't complain. It reroutes flow, gums off the failed conduit, waits for night and humidity to help reset pressure. Many small pipes mean no single failure ends the song. At your feet, another wonder is working. Fungal threads sheathing root tips, slipping into pores roots can't reach, swapping sugars for water and minerals. They're an invisible mining crew, multiplying contact area by hundreds, pulling coolness from hidden corners. In return, the tree pays with light turned sweet. If you keep that market open with wood chip mulch and fallen leaves left to rest, you're investing in gentler afternoons. Without a single machine, there's a street trick you can't see from the sidewalk. Connect 2 tree pits under the pavement with structural soil, and roots stop crawling upward for air and water. They get a shared basement, and the sidewalk heaves less. It's like linking 2 houses with a hallway. Suddenly, every chore gets easier. Finally, when rain comes, layered canopy slows each drop, leaf to leaf, shrub to ground cover, giving soil time to sip before drains must roar. Every liter that stays on site is a liter your pipes don't panic over. Trees don't just cool afternoons. They slow storms so the city can breathe. All of this, the cooler leaf against the hot stone, the revealed root flare, the mulched donut, a single deep watering instead of 100 spritzes, the fog-fine fungal threads under shredded wood, the pits linked underground are small gestures, but string them together and a neighborhood changes climate. Wind still blows, sun still glares, storms still surprise. Yet the heat softens a notch, the runoff calms a beat, and you, standing beneath a crown, feel your breathing fall into rhythm with a quiet engine that pulls invisible rivers upward into the sky.